She refused to leave a tip, unaware that she was humiliating her boss's nephew. This act triggered a chain of events that would change her life forever. What happened next would astonish even the most experienced. But let's start from the beginning. Lisa Thompson lived in an upscale suburban neighborhood, proud of her immaculate home and high-ranking position at a prestigious law firm. One evening, exhausted from a long day at work, she ordered dinner through a food delivery app. When the doorbell rang, Lisa opened the door with a look of annoyance on her face. Standing before her was a young black man in his early 20s, dressed neatly in a delivery uniform and holding a food bag. Marcus Carter, a college student working as a delivery driver to pay for his education, greeted her politely. Lisa gave him a disinterested glance. "Leave the bag on the steps," she said curtly. Marcus complied calmly, maintaining his professionalism. He smiled and held out a tablet for her to confirm receipt of the order. "Would you like to leave a tip?" he asked, following the standard procedure. Lisa scoffed dismissively. "A tip? For what? You're just doing your job. Confirm it and go." Marcus tensed slightly, but said nothing. He nodded, processed the payment, and turned to walk back to his car. Her words stung. It wasn't the first time someone disregarded his dignity, but it always hurt. Lisa went back inside, giving the encounter no further thought. Marcus, however, sat in his car for a moment, steadying himself before calling his uncle. "Hi, Uncle David," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Today was one of those deliveries that makes you want to quit." David Carter, the CEO of a major firm, listened attentively to his nephew, making mental notes of the details. He knew Marcus was patient and avoided conflicts, but this incident seemed significant. "Was it a customer?" David asked, keeping his irritation in check. "Yes, a woman with an air of importance," Marcus replied. "She refused to leave even the smallest tip. I know it's not a big deal, but sometimes I just want to ask, why?" David sighed heavily, not yet realizing how personally he would become involved in the situation. Marcus couldn't have guessed that this woman was one of the key figures in his uncle's company. And Lisa, content with her evening meal, couldn't imagine that her indifference had already set in motion events that would soon transform her life. The next morning, Lisa arrived at work in a sharp suit, exuding confidence. She was preparing for an important meeting with the company's CEO, Mr. David Carter. This meeting was her chance to solidify her position at the firm and position herself as a candidate for a promotion. Meanwhile, David Carter sat in his office, reflecting on the conversation he had with his nephew the previous evening. Determined to better understand what had happened, he decided to meet with Marcus and invited him to visit the office. By midday, while Lisa was working on documents in her office, she heard lively voices in the hallway. Looking through her glass door, she immediately recognized the young man standing outside. It was the same delivery driver. "What's he doing here?" Lisa muttered in surprise. The secretary directed Marcus straight to the CEO's office. Lisa watched as David Carter warmly embraced the young man, greeting him as a close relative. "Who's that?" Lisa asked the secretary, trying to mask her unease. "That's Marcus Carter, Mr. Carter's nephew. He occasionally stops by to chat with his uncle," the secretary replied casually. Lisa's heart sank. Memories of her behavior toward the delivery driver the night before came flooding back. She realized Marcus was no ordinary delivery worker. Later, David held a small meeting with the department heads, including Lisa. To her surprise and horror, he introduced Marcus to the team as his nephew. "Marcus is helping me with a project on corporate culture," David explained, his gaze briefly settling on Lisa. "He's assisting in assessing how our company's values are reflected in everyday interactions." Lisa's palms grew clammy as panic set in. She realized her words and actions from the previous evening could come to light, and her once secure position at the company now felt precarious. After the meeting, Marcus lingered in the corridor. Lisa, attempting to appear composed, approached him hesitantly. "Hi," she said stiffly. "You work here now?" Marcus met her gaze calmly, a faint shadow of disappointment flickering in his eyes. "Not exactly," he replied with a polite smile. "I'm just helping my uncle with his project." Lisa quickly excused herself, retreating to her office with a sinking feeling. She knew the moment was approaching when she'd have to confront her behavior. Marcus watched her leave, his expression thoughtful. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the wheels of justice were already turning. Lisa struggled to keep her anxiety in check throughout the day. Her mind replayed the harsh words she had said to Marcus the previous evening, and his calm yet perceptive gaze. She avoided going near David Carter's office, fearing that her behavior toward his nephew might already be known, but evasion was futile. In the afternoon, the secretary informed Lisa that Mr. Carter wanted to see her. Gathering her composure, Lisa walked into his office, determined to appear confident. "Have a seat, Lisa," David said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His voice was steady, but his gaze was cold. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," Lisa replied, clasping her hands to conceal her nervousness. David remained silent for a moment before picking up a tablet and playing a video. The screen displayed footage from Lisa's doorbell camera, showing Marcus standing on her porch and capturing her sharp words. "Do you recognize this situation?" David asked, his eyes fixed on her. Lisa turned pale. This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, panic rising in her voice. "I didn't know who he was." "And if you had known, would that have changed your behavior?" David interrupted, his tone firm. "Lisa, your actions revealed not just your attitude toward people, but your inability to uphold the principles of respect that this company values." Lisa tried to defend herself. "I was tired. It had been a long day." David raised his hand, cutting her off. "Fatigue is no excuse for demeaning others." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze softening slightly, though his tone remained resolute. "I expected better from you, Lisa. We value professionalism, but even more, we value humanity. For now, this will be a warning, but any future missteps will be treated much more severely." Lisa nodded, her face burning with humiliation. She quietly left the office, fully aware that her reputation had been tarnished. Marcus, sitting in the lobby while waiting for his uncle, noticed her hurried and flustered departure. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus gave her a slight nod, as if to say he had moved on. But for Lisa, this moment would remain etched in her memory. Now, her future at the company depended on whether she could change and rebuild the trust she had lost. After her conversation with David, Lisa spent several sleepless nights reflecting on what had happened. Her professional pride had been wounded, but what struck her more deeply was how easily she had allowed herself to behave disrespectfully. At a morning meeting a few days later, David introduced a new company initiative aimed at improving corporate culture. The project included training sessions on ethics, equality, and inclusivity. "Everyone on the team will participate," he announced, looking directly at Lisa. "We need more than just professionals. We need to be examples of humane conduct in business." Lisa felt the weight of his words as if they were meant specifically for her. This was a challenge she knew she had to meet. Over the following weeks, Lisa began to show signs of change. She volunteered to attend the training sessions and actively engaged in discussions, asking questions and sharing her thoughts. During one session, she crossed paths with Marcus, who had been invited to speak about his work with David. After his presentation, Lisa approached him hesitantly. "Marcus," she began, her voice slightly shaky, "I want to apologize for my behavior. I realize now how unfair I was." Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you for saying that. People make mistakes, but what matters is their willingness to learn." That brief exchange marked a significant turning point for Lisa. She began investing more time in building genuine relationships with her colleagues, striving to engage in honest and respectful dialogue. Her co-workers noticed the change and gradually started to trust her again. Meanwhile, Marcus, inspired by his experience, launched a program for students from underprivileged backgrounds, helping them find opportunities for work and education. David wholeheartedly supported the initiative. integrating it into the company's corporate responsibility policy. By the end of the quarter, Lisa led her team in a meeting where she presented ideas to improve the company's internal culture. David listened intently, and after the meeting, approached her. "Well done, Lisa," he said. "I'm glad to see how much you've grown." Lisa smiled, feeling, for the first time, that her efforts had been truly acknowledged. Epilogue: Lisa's story concluded with her achieving not only professional growth, but also a personal transformation. She gained a deeper understanding of the importance of respecting everyone, regardless of their position. The company, in turn, took a significant step toward creating a genuinely inclusive culture, setting an example for the industry.